the recording, and it should. Here we go. Welcome everyone to the to tonight's webinar on starting your own business. My name is John Fisher, and we will start in just a minute or so. And I also have with me Angela Baker from the Mount Prospect Public Library. So we'll wait for everyone to get logged in and signed in, and then we'll start. All right, so we are, let's get started here this evening. Thanks everyone for joining us. I know this is valuable time away from friends and family, and we appreciate you being online with us this evening. And so let me introduce Angela. Angela is the business librarian for the Mount Prospect Public Library. Angela, you want a few words?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad all of you are here tonight. Like John said, this is valuable evening time, and we're happy to share it with you. My name is Angela Baker, and I'm the business librarian at the Mount Prospect Public Library. And we are so glad and so grateful to have a partnership with SCORE that supports our patrons and our community in all of their small business endeavors. And our speaker tonight, John Fisher, has had countless appointments with Mount Prospect patrons in person at the library, and in the last 18 months over Zoom. So we're so grateful for his time and his expertise that he's generously sharing with us this evening. Anecdotally, we have seen an increase in questions at the research desk from patrons looking for information about starting a business or looking for information to support a business proposal. And that trend has been visible nationally as well, with changes in the labor market causing some people to make big changes in their professional life. And starting a new business can be one expression of those big changes. And so please just continue to keep us in mind at the library for all of those business information questions. And we love making referrals to SCORE as well, so that you can benefit from their expertise. And that's all I have to say, John. I'm looking forward to learning something tonight.
Okay, thanks a lot, Angela. And so a little bit about SCORE, for those of you who may not know. We are a nonprofit and let's see, someone has raised their hand here. Bernina, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
Could you see me?
No, this is webinar mode. So, your video is not on. So, on webinar mode, you can't see all the people that are participating. Is that what you're thinking about?
Okay, I thought we were. Yeah, that's what I thought. We were supposed to see each other, but it's fine. I'm listening, and as long as you can hear me, I'm good with that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so SCORE is a nonprofit resource partner of the Small Business Administration. So we help people with their business. And so we have over 10,000 volunteers in 300 different chapters across the country. And we are serving people in about 1,500 different communities here. So if you're interested, as Angela said, in starting a business, understanding about a business, if you've already started a business, look us up and see what we have here. So What we do is we offer one-on-one mentoring, either in person or online. Most of it is online right now. There are a few places that are doing in-person mentoring, but people seem to think it's more convenient to do this online. We have workshops and seminars, just like the one that you're attending here. And we also have about 60 mentors in our chapter, which is the northchicago.score.org. So take a look at the website. It has a lot of different information about it here. So let's see, next session here. So if you want a mentor, go to our website, northchicago.score.org, and choose Find a Mentor. You can put in some keywords. Let's say you want to look at starting a manufacturing business, you want to start something else. You can do a keyword search on that and find mentors across the country. Or you can look for mentors that are specifically in this area. And you can find a list of mentors here. And that's really our main purpose, is to help businesses start, help businesses grow. So tonight we're having a webinar on, you want to start a business. This is the basics of understanding how to start a business. As I said, my name is John Fisher. I'm a mentor with SCORE and have been doing that for about 5 years now. I have a long experience in the corporate world, and I've had my own consulting company now since 2006. So I'm experienced in both large companies, mid-sized companies, and small companies, and I'm what's called a solopreneur. So I have my own company, and I'm the only person, and I'm the only employee, which means I get to be the CEO, and I also get to take out the trash. So that's where we are. So we're going to talk a little bit about the components of a business and understanding some critical success factors for starting a business. And then at the end, we have a self-assessment so that you can think about whether or not you are ready to start a business, or what are the things that you need to do in order to move forward. And one of the logical next steps, if you're thinking about starting a business, is to work with a SCORE mentor. So some of the things we're going to talk about here are, what are the myths? What are some characteristics of an entrepreneur? We have had in the past various assessments that talk about sort of an entrepreneurial attitude or approach or personality. And I'm of the opinion that while personality and such is a factor, people can learn a lot of things. And so if you've never started a business, that's no reason why you can't do that. But you really need to think about what that's going to involve. And that's some of the stuff that we're thinking about here. What are the components? Funding and finances. And just to be clear for all of us here, we're not going to go into a lot of detail on each of these. What this is really an overview of the idea of how do you start a business? What do you need to look at? And then if you're really interested in that, we can dive deeper into that, or you can go to the SCORE website. You can find a lot of on-demand webinars, or as I said, go talk to a SCORE mentor. So here's some of the myths. Myth one, all I need is a good idea to be a successful entrepreneur. And obviously, since we're calling these myths, that's not right. A good idea is a start, but there's a lot of things that go on, and that goes into myth number two. If you're out on your own, you won't have to work so hard or such long hours. And one of the characteristics, or one of the things that happen when you're starting your own company is, you're it, and so it's much harder than other things that you've done, perhaps as being a part of a larger company, and you work a lot of hours. in many cases, you don't stop working. You think about your business in the middle of the night. You'll be able to deduct everything, so you won't have to pay taxes. And the IRS looks out for small businesses, and they look out for different things that spark their interest. And Lord knows you don't want to get the interest of the IRS. So that's not the case. You do have to pay taxes. There's a variety of ways to do that, but that is something that will happen. So if you work independently, you don't have to report to a boss. Everybody has a boss. In some cases, your boss might be your spouse or your kids who would like to have groceries this month. And so if you are the sole breadwinner, those are some important people that depend on you getting your business going. They get to do the work they want and only what they find interesting. And that could be true, but you also have to do a lot of other stuff. You definitely are embarking on something that is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort here. And the last one, if you choose to be self-employed, you'll be limited in what you can achieve since you'll be working alone. Well, it can be a choice to work alone. You can work in partnership. Myself, I have a company that I'm the only employee, but I do work for other companies. So I subcontract with other larger companies. If necessary, I bring other people into my projects. And so you're only limited in terms of what you want to do here. So, here's some success factors, critical success factors. So oddly enough, you really do need to understand business fundamentals in order to start a business. A lot of us don't really like finances or spreadsheets or figuring out, profit and loss or those kinds of things, but you got to do that as part of your business. The other thing here is that if you don't have some experience in the field, it's going to be harder for you to succeed. So let's say you want to start a franchise, and a franchise might be a sign company, it might be a 7-Eleven, it might be a McDonald's, it might be a bunch of different things. But if you have no experience in that field, you're going to be at a disadvantage. The other thing that is key is the importance of sales. And a lot of people look at sales as something that they'd rather not do or may not be very good at. And that's one of the things of a small business. If you're not very good at something, then you need to find someone that can do that, or you need to get good at that yourself. Because if you don't have sales, you're not going to have a business for very long. So you're also, one of the fundamentals here is that you need to put money and time in to the small business. Nobody's going to start it but you. And if you don't have skin in the game, it's a whole different thing. A friend of mine always said, if you're going to start a business, don't do it part-time, because if you try to do it part-time, when the hard parts come, you may not want to do those. But if it's your sole source of income, then you're going to put in the time and effort to do that. So some personal characteristics: you have to be a risk taker. You have to take a lead. You have to have a strong work ethic, and you have to ask others for input. And again, here's a SCORE, the SCORE mentors that are in our chapter and in the SCORE organization are extremely experienced business people. And so ask them. One of the best things to do is to ask someone who has done what you're looking to do. And they will have a lot of things that they did that they wish they hadn't done when they started their business here. So selling, like I said, a lot of times people don't think that they need to sell or that they want to sell. I've got a good network. I know a lot of people. People want whatever it is that I have to sell. But you really can't have a business without sales. And what we've got here is a picture of what's called the sales funnel. So if you think about it, it becomes a numbers game. So Leads are anybody out there that might want to buy your product or service. You do some sales calls to narrow that down and see if anyone might be interested. After you do the calls, you might find some people that you want to follow up with. And then you may want to have a conversation with those people about what your products or services are. And if there's a fit, you may get a sale out of it. Now, out of the 100 leads, you may get one sale. So it is important that you not be discouraged when a lot of people say, no, I'm not really interested, or say I'm interested, but I'm not willing to spend any money on what you're doing. You'll find all of those. And so the qualified leads may be a ratio of like 3 to 1. And a qualified lead is someone who needs your product or service that you know really needs to do what you're looking to sell. And other people are leads, but qualified leads are much better. So if you have relatives or you have friends or you have your network and people know you, they know what you can do, they can give you a warm introduction to someone, that becomes in a sense a qualified lead here. So the other thing is that you have to keep in mind that nobody wants to buy your product if it doesn't help them. So you sell a solution versus a product. I believe one of the famous marketing gurus said that people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. So they want the outcome, they want the result. They don't necessarily want all of the trappings. And so if you can look at this in terms of what solution am I providing, then people will be much more interested in it than if you're selling a specific product. So what kind of person starts a business here? They are maybe decision makers. They are the self-starters, hard workers. There's a drive to succeed. Maybe my experience is a little bit peculiar, but a lot of the CEOs that I've encountered are very heavily driven and in some cases appear to be overly focused on their business. And that's what they need to do. They need to be a person that looks for opportunities, a person that does stuff as well as thinks about stuff. So a lot of people have really good ideas, but the successful business person is someone who puts those ideas into action. So they do stuff as well as thinking about stuff. And the other thing is that they're healthy. They have the support of their family, and it's going to take a lot out of you to start a business here. Now we have a couple of questions. So one of these is when you mention sales, are you talking about negotiating contracts, or what definition are you using? So when I talk about sales, I talk about someone who is willing to take their hard-earned money and give it to you for your product. That's a sale. Okay. So it's like anything. You go to the grocery store and you decide which apple you want to buy, or which loaf of bread you want to buy. There's reasons behind that. And when you're looking at sales, you may be one of 5 different businesses that do the same thing you do. You may be one of 100 different businesses. You may be relatively unique. And so keep in mind that people are going to take their money and give it to you in order for you to do something. And that's an important thing to think about here. So another follow-on question: which more important, sales or marketing? The answer to that is that they're both important, but marketing doesn't get you any revenue. Sales gets you revenue. So you can have the best branding strategy in the world, but if nobody is willing to close and to actually sign on the dotted line or write a check or give you a credit card, your business isn't going to survive here. So sales is in many ways the number one characteristic here of successful businesses. So I always like to ask, and I actually did this even before I started my own business, but the the idea here is, what problem are you trying to solve with your business? It's a fairly simple question, but sometimes it's a complicated answer. But the idea here is, what are you doing? What solution are you bringing to the table? Okay, so some people, when they come to talk to SCORE mentors, say, should I be an S corp, or should I be a LLC, or should I hire an attorney? Should I do this or that? And you know, you should look first at, what are you going to do? Um, what is your business? And don't get too far into a lot of details. We always tell people not to spend a lot of money up front until you find out if people are actually interested. Take, for example, Apple. I mean, Apple sold computers, and early on, they weren't particularly successful. Um, but now they're wildly successful because they have the products that people want. And so it sometimes takes you 2 or 3 product cycles to get uh, what people will actually pay you for. So basic thoughts here. If your business idea doesn't solve a problem, you should reconsider what it is. It may be a known problem or a not known problem. So for example, no one said, hey, Steve Jobs, I'd really like this sort of smartphone that can access the internet and take pictures. And nobody said that. Jobs had an idea that he wanted to do a smartphone, and he created it. So people had the problem of not being able to take their pictures or their music or their ability to access the internet with them wherever they went. And so that was the problem, and he solved that problem. The other thing to think about is, who's going to buy your product or your service. And a good way to look at this is, how do you describe your business in one sentence? So, you need to think about it in terms of, what value does it provide to customers, and why should they buy your product or service versus someone else? So here, let's take an exercise here. So thinking about your business idea, and then answer these 3 questions. First, what is the idea? If you can't describe it distinctly and clearly, you're going to have trouble selling them. People are not going to really buy it. So what value does your business provide to the customer? In other words, what job does it do? What solution does it provide? What problem does it solve? And then, why should people buy your product or service? You're nice people. You've been around a long time. You have a lot of experience. But there's a lot of other people out there that have those same characteristics. Why would people want to buy your particular product and service? So take a couple of minutes here and think about writing down your answer. And then we can ask for some volunteers to put it in the chat, and see if we think that what they have, their business idea, is something that would be of interest to us. And that may or may not be relevant, because we may not be the target audience. For example, if you're looking to sell something to people in a specific age group, Facebook might be a really good place to advertise your business, or it might not be a very good place to advertise your business here. So here's another question. Is there any framework to validate your business idea and whether it'll be profitable? And yeah, that is one of the things we're kind of looking at right now, is how to distinctly say, what is your business? What is it? What value does it provide? And why should someone buy my products and service? Now, the other side of that is, how much does it cost you to provide your service? And then how much can you charge for it? So, for example, if you're looking to, and here's a great example, actually. Years and years ago, let's think back in the distant past when there wasn't a Starbucks, you could get a cup of coffee for 50 cents. Now you can get a cup of coffee for $3 because it's the coffee experience. Okay. So Starbucks isn't selling just a cup of coffee. Starbucks is selling a coffee experience. The place smells like coffee. The place is decked out in coffee paraphernalia. Um, and so they were able to take a 50-cent cup of coffee and turn it into a $3 cup of coffee. Now it maybe cost them a 30 cents, 50 cents to make that cup of coffee. So one of the exercises that you'd want to do on your is my business idea profitable is what's it going to cost to do it and how much can I sell it for? Because if it costs more to do it than what you can sell it for, then it's probably not a very good idea. So any volunteers here for the for our exercise? Anybody have a good business idea they want to share? Okay, we have some people that have raised their hand. Bernina, you're open. You have an open mic. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, there you go.
Could you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good.
So do you have a business idea?
I do. I was, so I do have a business idea. I'm looking to start and launch a gourmet popcorn shop.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
And I have a passion for popcorn. I love popping it. I love eating it. I love sharing it. I pop it. I'm very good at it too, with all different kinds of, like ingredients, different flavors. I work for a corporation, CDW in Vernon Hills, and I take it there all the time, and I just distribute it. The reason I'm so much interested in doing it is because I came on with a partner of mine that started a gourmet popcorn shop in Waukegan. That it really gave me, it really had me to really look at it in a way uh, that this is something that I would like to do on my own because I see what drew the customers.
Mhm.
The joy of it, the customer service, the atmosphere, the promotions we ran, a lot of media. I was in charge basically of the advertising and the marketing of that. And I work for an IT company, so I was able to do a lot of menus, imaging, logos, and something that's really attractive, what I would like to see coming inside of a popcorn shop. And just to see the looks on the people's face and what drew them over and over again to coming inside this popcorn shop. I said, you know what, this is something that I would like to do, on my own, and I'm here.
Yeah, so let me stop you there and ask you a couple of questions. What do you think it would cost to start a popcorn shop?
My friend, Greg, his name is Greg. And I started with him when it was an empty building from start to finish until day of grand opening. So he shared a lot of things with me, how much money it took to start his business. I did all of his inventory. He taught me everything. So to start that business, it took him $50,000.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so and that's fantastic. It's great that you have some business experience in there. That's a leg up. And yeah, $50,000 is probably about right. It might be a little more now, might be a little less depending. But it's not something that you're going to get $50,000 worth of revenue in the first month or two.
Right.
Right. And so what you need, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is you need some funding in order to do that.
Exactly.
So good. So let me take one more here. Rod Karazako, I believe, has raised his hand. Rod, are you there?
unmute. Hello.
Hello. We're
Hello.
here.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking or leaving me the spot to say a few words.
Sure.
My idea is to open a music school.
Okay.
I have in the past, I've I've opened I've had two restaurants in the past. The first restaurant I had, I spent about half a million dollars. I opened that in 1996. After 7 years, I gave it to my workers as a you could say they're for all the hard work they did for me and all the headaches and everything. So I kind of just let them have it. I opened up another restaurant um, a couple of years later, and I did the same. I got tired of the restaurant business and I went into real estate, and now I do real estate. I rehab units in the city, and now I'm 53 and I want to do something a little bit different. I'm a music lover. Whenever I listen to music, it like blows me away, all kinds of music. So I would like to open a music school. So I have this
Mhm.
big giant house with 7 acres, 1,000-foot driveway. And what I would like to do is open a music school there. I'm not sure if it's even legal at this point, but for with zoning, I mean.
Yeah.
So my idea is to open the school there. I have a baby grand piano already. I have the location. Like I said, it's a beautiful home, and I want to make the school there in the home.
Right.
And my motivation is just the feeling that I get just from listening to music. I got my karaoke machine. I have those pianos that it plays by itself. So I got Elton John on there all the time, and I'm listening to it. And my personal experience with music is just like a driving force. Music moves me. Sometimes I'm tired. I work sometimes. You were mentioning entrepreneurs work a lot of hours. I've been working about 17 hours this past week. I own a couple of Airbnbs in the city. I got some guests checking in Thursday for 4 days. You know, it's good money. But I want to try I want to try this music school. I have an idea how to the mechanics of opening a business, and I don't know anything about playing instruments, but I know there are teachers, and I would be hiring teachers
Well,
to teach
let me
the class.
again, thanks, Rod, for sharing your idea here. And I just like the previous speaker, you have obviously a passion for this.
Yes,
But one of the things you need to think about is why would they go to your music school? Why would they, why would they, um, um, why not go to the Art Institute of Chicago's music school? And so thinking about that, you need to think about not only your passion drives you to do this, you're going to have to think about what other people's passion drives them to go to your school. And so, so great idea. It would take a fair amount um, of, of upfront funding to do this, as I'm sure you're aware. And also, you would need to, in effect, have employees. And so, when you have employees, or you may be able to do this on contract basis, but those are the things to think about here is now you've got your idea, now you've got some thought, now you've got to go through that exercise we talked about a little bit earlier of, can I make money doing this? And can I make enough money that I don't need to do some of my other businesses here? So great, great examples here. Thanks everyone for sharing those. And let's. I know there's some others in the chat, and hopefully we may be able to get to those a little bit later. But let's move on here. And so some options that you've got here, and this is something that could apply to some of these, is you could start a new business or you could buy an existing business. There are people out there, just like Rod, who have a business and then decided they didn't want to do that business anymore. They wanted to sell it. And so that can be that can be something that you're, you can look for. You can look for a business to buy, and a business, or you can buy a franchise. You can have a purely online business. I don't know if you guys have thought about it, but if you go on Amazon, so Amazon is like the big online retailer. But do you know that I believe it's something like 60% of the stuff that's on Amazon is not sold by Amazon themselves, but is sold by what they call the Amazon Marketplace. So you, as a very small business, don't have to have the expense of a retail store. You can have your products on Amazon and appear and take full advantage of the brand of Amazon. And so that's a way to do it, to start an online business. There are a lot of online businesses out there that are starting with very little expense. And when you're starting a business, unless you have a big bankroll to put on your in your business, you're going to have to borrow money, and you're going to have to get involved in funding of some sort. And the least, if you can start your business, say part-time, or you can start your business in a small scale and then ramp it up, a lot of times you can find out whether it's profitable or not here. So those are some options. So in terms of what you've got, so starting a business, it's brand new. You can choose your name, your logo, all of that stuff. Some of the disadvantages is that you don't have a customer base. You don't have a track record. And if you don't, I remember visiting my bank several years ago, and they said, well, you should apply for a business loan or a business line of credit. And I said, well, I don't need a business line of credit right now. I'm doing fine, thank you. And they said, well, but that's the best time for you to apply for a business line of credit, because your business is profitable. But at some point, if your business is not as profitable, then we're not going to be as likely to loan you money or to offer you a line of credit. So, think about how you would get the funding, and think about the fact that with a new business, you're starting from scratch. Now, if you've done that business a lot of, in the past, then you might not be starting from scratch, but it's just something definitely to think about here. Buying a business, there is an established clientele. There is, there are records and information that you can review from the person you're buying it from. And one of the disadvantages is that there's no guarantee that the prior success of the business is going to continue. In many cases, or in some cases, the success of that business relied on the personality or the sales expertise of the previous owner. And if they leave, a lot of the customers may decide, well, they left, I now have an opportunity to go out and look at other options. So I might do that. And we always say, seek professional advice on this. So the records of a small business can be difficult to decipher, and there can be different things in there that you need to look at. And so, a good accountant and a good attorney can come in handy here in terms of buying a business. There's also business brokers. There are people who specialize in helping people sell their business and helping other people buy their business. So also franchise. So franchise is a right granted to market a company's goods or services within normally a certain territory or location. So there's a lot of sign companies out there, but they're not right next to each other, right? So you may have a specific territory, so you may have a specific zip code or a part of a zip code or something like that, and you can sell that product there. There are a lot of regulations on franchises. They are sometimes have a very heavy or very serious brand, and that can be great. Um, and they often will help you start your business. So there'll be people within the franchise that act as consultants and help you do that. And so the other thing, the piece of this is though that you are not always in control of what you can sell. You may be limited in terms of the things that you can buy or sell. It used to be years ago, I think it's different now, that McDonald's could not put tomatoes on their hamburgers because McDonald's sourced everything centrally and they couldn't, ship the tomatoes as easily as they could everything else. Now they're doing that, but they felt that that was a market disadvantage for them. And McDonald's is a franchise, so if you have a McDonald's, you have to sell what McDonald's is selling. You can't come up with a whole new idea of different things to sell. So there may be boundaries and there may be limited choices. And so, again, seek advice of a professional. And there are several SCORE mentors who are very experienced in running successful franchises here. So nonprofit, if you're wanting to think about a nonprofit, and Rod, who was thinking about doing a music school, schools are part of what could be defined as a nonprofit. There are different statuses for that. So it doesn't mean, nonprofit doesn't mean non-revenue. So it's a tax status to be a nonprofit, and it has to, you have to qualify, but would look at educational or charitable. And so, there are different things out there from, let's say, the University of Chicago is an educational institution, which is a form of a nonprofit. Then you have other universities out there, which are for-profit universities, and different, and they have a whole different approach to things, but that's one option to think about here. The 501c3 is a status that gives you tax exemption, and can be a complicated process. So again, ask, or you don't necessarily ask, hire an attorney, a well-versed attorney in this area here. So online businesses, we talked about that, lower startup costs, flexibility. You can, you can be in charge of shipping and receiving, or in the case of if you're doing business with Amazon, Amazon can do the shipping and receiving. There are sometimes a lot of low barriers to entry means that there may be higher competition, because if it's cheap and easy to start a business, and you'll notice this, I keep using Amazon as an example, but let's say you want to buy a mouse for your computer. You might find 6 different companies on Amazon that sell the same mouse, and they may be at slightly different prices, or they may all be the same price. So, how do you distinguish? How do you get people to come to your particular part of the Amazon site? So these are, again, some things to think about in terms of the different businesses. So any questions so far here? Let's see. Tax benefits, the real estate taxes on a music school. Well, if it is deemed as a nonprofit, then you could be exempt from certain types of taxes. And so, and someone here is saying, thinking of doing a business online, and to build up their profits, and that is a good approach. Again, in order to really run a successful business, there's a lot of factors you have to take into account. So here's some of them. You know, there's marketing, there's sales. We've talked about those. There's the products and services. How are you going to make your popcorn? And again, making popcorn in your kitchen is different than making 1,000 packages of popcorn to ship out to 1,000 different customers. There's different components in there. How are you going to price your product? How are you going to brand your product? How are you going to deal with the competition? And if you look on the left-hand side here, this is a classic makeup of an organization. But when you start out, you may be everything. You may be all of those. And so you need to be ready to put in the effort to do that. Let's see. The customer service and shipping, when it determines which particular company to go with. I have an online business since 2006. Yeah, online businesses can be very profitable here. So here's a little thing on the difference between marketing and sales. And a lot of people confuse the two. Marketing is what you use to create the desire for someone to purchase your product or service. It revolves around an image. It revolves around maybe a logo. And the product or service is not going to sell itself. So you need to market that product or service to people and, in effect, convince them that it's something that they want to buy. You know, think about, I always think of in terms of marketing, chewing gum, right? How does Wrigley keep marketing their chewing gum? I mean, people have their favorite chewing gum and they've had it for years, and you know, that's it. And that's why you see sometimes ads that just keep that brand in mind. So there's nothing in there to buy or sell. It's just pure marketing. Now, sales involves, as we said, finding prospects, maybe making a presentation, maybe doing a proposal or a bid. And here's an interesting thing, asking for the order. So a lot of times people will go through the sales process and then they won't specifically ask, hey, are you willing to buy my product or service? You know, and that one question can make all the difference. If you go away without an answer to that, then likely people won't come back. And a pure example of that, a little bit different now, but used cars, or not used cars, just cars. If you go into a car dealership to buy a car, they'll do everything they can to keep you there until you buy that car, because they know if you leave, the chances of you buying the car are maybe 20%, maybe 30%. So they will keep you there, in effect, asking for the order. Here, keep doing it. What do I have to do to get you to buy this car? And so that's what you have to do. You also, in terms of sales, you have to process the order. You have to create the invoices, and you have to basically send out the bills and then start collecting the money. So here's some other thoughts on you know, your products and services. What are you selling? What business problem does it solve? You know, who needs it? Why? We talked about popcorn. We talked about music. You know, I'm not a good candidate for a music school, but my son may be an excellent candidate for a music school, or my wife might be an excellent candidate. So one of the things you need to think about is who would buy what you have to sell. And then branding, you know, that gives you name recognition. Very few sort of household brands, Coca-Cola, Tide. There are some brands that actually, like Kleenex is a brand, but people use that to describe all tissues. And the Kleenex people are very happy about that, because that means that their brand is up at the forefront. However, if you go in to the store to buy tissue, a lot of times you may not choose Kleenex because it's really may be too expensive relative to others. So while they have the brand and they have the awareness, they may not eventually make the sale here. Question here. Score Mentor, the expertise in WBE and DBE status, and yes, there are score mentors. So you can do a search on those characteristics in the SCORE website and find that out. So also price. How do you price your product or your service? That's an interesting question, because you want to price it so that people will want to sell it, but you don't want to price it too high. You also don't want to price it too low, because if people perceive that you have something at a much lower price, they may not think it's high quality. And I know certainly one of the marketing gurus always said, have three prices: a small, medium, and large. Because if you just have a small and large, people will typically buy the small. If you have small, medium, and large, people will buy the medium. And if you've ever been through a McDonald's, you know that small is no longer small. Small is and large is gigantic. But they keep those kinds of designations here because that's what people expect. So how do you price? And again, that is a complicated process here. Let's see. So I have a side question that we could do here. If you have a website development consulting firm, what sort of insurance is required? Sometimes that is your client may require insurance, but you should generally have what's called general liability and errors and omissions. So if your website all of a sudden crashes, or what you put in the website isn't correct, and somehow they lose a lot of money, you may be held liable for that. So errors and omissions insurance, and then general liability insurance. Those are the two types of insurance. I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on. So as we keep going through here, again, well, who's your competition? You have to know that. I often find people that are looking for something. Let's take an example. So we have the popcorn example that came up earlier. There's always Garrett's popcorn, right? That's a household name in Chicago. The people that fly through O'Hare just to buy a big box of Garrett's popcorn. Okay, that's the competition. That's what you're going up against potentially. And if you don't know the competition and you're not aware of what their what they do, what their quality is, what their prices are, then you're going to be at a disadvantage in terms of your customers here. So let's let me see. I had a poll created, but it looks like it for some reason. So I will just ask this question. People can think about it. We've talked about marketing, sales, how to define your product and service, branding, how to price, and identifying your competition. Which one of those do you think is the most challenging for you personally? Which of those? And you can throw that in the chat or in the Q&A. And so how to price, that's the first one that came up, and that's very common. There's also, here's the other interesting question: do I give away my stuff free at first and then start charging for it? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe a good idea to give it at a discount, or to give it in a special circumstance. I have friends in sales who say, don't discount your product, but say, okay, because you are the first set of customers, I'm going to give you a special deal. The regular price is, $100 for one of these. I'm going to give it to you for $70 for the next 6 months, because you are a customer that I can use as an example here. So here's challenging is marketing. That's another one. Marketing is not an easy thing to do. Um, you know, the you know, maybe someone one of them said here a grand opening sale. That's another way to bring in people, and again, that's another way to discount your product. But people don't. Um, if people buy your product at a discount, they're going to be reluctant to buy your product at the real price, because they feel they're not getting the value anymore. So those are things to think about here. So pricing, marketing, sales. We had I think a question a little bit before about, I don't want to be a sleazy car salesman. Much rather market and position my product. Is this realistic? Um, Perhaps, but I think you're going to be a lot more successful if you figure out how to sell your product. If you make it, they will come, or if you build it, they will come. That can work in some cases, but it's not always the kind of thing. So you use the example of the Kleenex I used before. People think of Kleenex as tissue, but when they go in to actually buy it, they might buy a different product because they don't really care whether it's Kleenex or whether it's the Walmart brand or whether it's some other brand of tissue. So so you need to somehow convince people to take their hard-earned money and give it to you for your product or service. And that's not always an easy thing to do. So let's go on. So here's some structures. I know we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that the structures are not necessarily the first thing that you want to do. Back to no sleazy car salesman, only an uninformed customer. Well, maybe. Although, think about how many cars do you buy in a year normally? 10, 15, 20? Not really. Not most people buy one car every 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years. A car salesman sells 20, 50, 100 cars a year. So they have a lot more experience. So they're not necessarily sleazy in some cases. They may just be better at negotiating or better at doing that kind of a deal here. So back to organizational forms. So you want to select something that fits your business needs. So there are sole proprietorship, which is not necessarily a legally recognized form of business. And this is something that, depending on the business, you can do. You don't need to incorporate. You don't need to do anything. You simply, in some cases, do what's called DBA, doing business as. So I'm John Fisher, and I might be doing business as, somebody's cup manufacturing company or Ace Furniture. I'm doing business as that, and that's all you need to do. You need to keep records. You need to make sure you keep your personal funds separate from your business funds, but that's a very simple structure. It doesn't protect you. So some of the legally recognized things like a limited liability company or an S Corp or a C Corp will protect you. So the limited liability company means that if you are operating as a let's say a sole proprietor, and you do something that causes damage to your customer, they can sue you for your house, for your car, for your whatever you have personally. If you have a limited liability company, they can only sue that company for the company's assets. So that limits your liability. In other words, it limits the things that are put at risk. S corporation is the same way, and some small businesses are LLCs, some are S corps. Normally, C corps are larger organizations, but those are different types of business entities. Again, depending on what you want. There are some limitations in terms of how you share or distribute the profits based on whether it's an LLC, an S Corp, or a C Corp. That's not something we'll get into here, but those are things to consider. What kind of sole proprietor doesn't need an LLC if they don't think they're going to have any liability. If they do think they may have liability, then they need an LLC. And right now, it doesn't cost much or take much effort to form an LLC or even an S Corp. Those can be done fairly quickly online, or simply filling out the forms through the Illinois Secretary of State. So here's some definitions of the simple structures here. And so, the general partnership is the same as that, but you have multiple owners. So it's a relationship rather than an entity. The challenge with that, they always say it's the worst people to have in your business are friends and family. Because a lot of times people go into a business with friend or family and they don't clearly structure how the business is going to operate, how they're going to share expenses, how they're going to share revenue, how they're going to share the marketing, how they're going to share the work. And you need to have that all laid out. It's just much cleaner if you have that laid out up front. So general partnership can work fine. Again, if you don't need the protection of liability, but there's no, as it says, no shelter for personal liability. And if this is important, it may not be attractive to potential buyers if you're simply a sole proprietor here. So, here's some characteristics of an LLC. It's a simple structure. You can set up an LLC in a matter of days. And what happens with both an LLC and an S Corp is that they're not taxed as a business entity. Any profits or losses flow through to you as an individual shareholder or owner. And so that's how that happens. The company makes profits and it comes into you as an owner. So it goes into your personal income tax. And question here, for sole proprietorship, what do you mean reporting and paperwork are not required? So what I mean is that for an LLC, you have to have you have to file paperwork. You have to file paperwork every year. You have to have on file who are the owners, all of that stuff with the state. You have that officially recognized by the state. You may have a license or you may have some other stuff. So a sole proprietorship, you don't need to do that. There is no legal paperwork for that. It's simply, that's how you're doing business. And so that's what I mean by less paperwork in here. So again, important thing is the last bullet point here. Consult your attorney or your accountant for more details on this. And if you have an accountant, they may have a preference for LLC or S Corp or sole proprietorship. And if you're going to continue with them as an accountant, then go with what they're more comfortable with, because it'll be easier for you because it's easier for them and they are charging you by the hour for their service. So things to think about: insurance. We talked a little bit about that. There are ways to get insurance online in a matter of minutes. As an independent businessman, as I said, I subcontract out sometimes to other companies. They may require me to have insurance. Some of my clients require me to have insurance, and they require that they are listed as on the insurance policy. So that's something that you can do. Again, there's different places online for insurance. You can simply Google business insurance and get several different websites to do that. You answer a few questions and they say, here's what we charge for insurance for a year, and you can take it. There are also what are called business owner policy, which may be a combination of general liability and errors and omissions. There are different kinds of insurance here. There may be regulations for example, popcorn. That's a food. It has to be regulated. It has to be inspected. The kitchen where you make the food has to have regular inspections. You may have to have a license to do that. You may rent a kitchen at a start instead of outfitting your entire kitchen yourself. You may go. There are rental kitchens out there. So if all you're doing is making popcorn, you go in. They've already done the certifications. They've already, the inspectors come in and look at that. And so there are things to think about. If you're selling products, you have to take the tax out, right? So in the state of Illinois, we have taxes. We have what's called sales tax. So every item that is sold, not every item, but most items that are sold have a tax on it. So as the business entity, you collect that tax, but it's not your money. That's money that's being paid to the government. And so you have to put that in a separate account. You have to make sure that you pay the government the sales tax that you have collected over usually either by the month or by the quarter or by the year, depending on your volume. And so, those are some things that you have to think about. The last part here, make sure you have a team. They don't have to be full-time. You can get, again, and I probably should put a business mentor in here. SCORE can provide you with a lot of good information about the various types of things that go on with the business, but definitely have access to a lawyer. There are online lawyers. There are all sorts of ways to do that, an accountant and a banker. And so we've got here's a question. What type of accountant should I retain? A CPA? I suppose, generally CPAs are more expensive than a bookkeeper or simply an accountant. CPAs are, they may be required for your business. They may not be required for your business. And so, again, I'm thinking in many cases, you ask people that that have a similar business, who do I use as an accountant? Who do they use? You look for recommendations from people. But in general, I would have to say that no, you don't necessarily need a CPA for your business. The CPAs in the room might not agree with that, but let's see. So question here, what if you started an LLC and didn't have any profit for a year because you just started it with no sales? Then what happens is that loss passes through to your personal income tax, and that takes away from the income tax that you might have to pay because you're experiencing a business loss. Now, you can't do a business loss for a lot of years, but you can for a few, because in many cases, depending on what you're doing, for example, we were talking about the music school or the popcorn shop. If it takes $50,000 to set up a popcorn shop, you're not going to pay all that back in 1 year. Maybe you will, but chances are pretty low. You use an accountant to spread that out over, let's say, 5 years because you're buying equipment and such, but you don't have to make a profit. You can have a loss. That is something that you can do. So let's see here. Finance, funding. A question here, is there a cap on business tax based on the turnover? I'm not sure I understand what that question is here. There is, in terms of talking about an LLC or an S Corp, there is no business tax. There is simply tax on your personal income. So the business has a profit or it has a loss that passes through to you for your individual. And there is no cap on how much you can make. There's probably a cap on how much you can lose, but that's definitely something to talk with your accountant about. So funding. A lot of people look at they start a business based on their personal credit rating. So if your business has no history, the only thing that a bank or anyone that wants to lend you money can base it on is your credit rating, and what you do. For your personal finances, if you're going to fund the business for a little while, then you're using your savings. So you may want to cut back in other areas. You may want to not take that trip, or you may want to not buy that new car and put that money in your business. So that's your personal finances. But your business finances, again, how much revenue is needed to start your business, to run your business, and to grow your business. You have, let's say, either the music store or music university or the popcorn shop. You've got monthly fees for utilities, property tax. You have either a lease, or you have a mortgage, or you have something that a monthly cost. You have certain fixed monthly costs. You have certain variable monthly costs. If you're making more popcorn, you have to buy more popcorn, and so you would have to look at all of those characteristics as you went in. So the idea is that you should probably count on having to fund your business for 6 to 12 months, depending on what it is. But it's good to have a core of business of funding when you start your business here. So personal savings, friends and family, loans, grants, and back to, you need a business banker. Those are the people that really, if you want to get, for example, a small business loan, and we can't cover that, but we have people in the SCORE chapter, that understand small business loans. That's not going to be a quick thing because it's coming through the government. So there are lots of things that you need to fill out. But there can also be grants for what your business is. If you're starting a music university, there may be a grant for starting a music university. There may be a grant for people of certain ethnic backgrounds starting a business, or military, or women, or people with disabilities. There may be a lot of different things to look at. So take some time and look for all of those different things here. So the question was asking this for a sole proprietorship business. Yeah. So with a sole proprietor, there is no business tax. It's your it is your income or your loss here. Same as an S corp. It's simply in effect a tax status there. So here's the self-assessment. We've got a self-assessment on the next page here, and it's going to look at different areas. And what we want you to do is take some time and fill in the score from 1 to 10. And this will give you some areas to work on for your sessions with your SCORE mentor. And as you start filling out some of the information, your scores are going to increase here. So here's some things. Is my product an unmet need? Can it be expanded to gain additional customer groups? So, for example, if we start with popcorn, do we want to then go into hot dogs, or do we then want to go into something else? A good example of that is Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson makes motorcycles, right? Well, Harley Davidson makes more money on Harley Davidson clothes than they do on Harley Davidson motorcycles. So you might want to be able to expand your idea or your product here. So market. I know who my potential buyers are, and I have a clear value proposition for my buyers. So give yourself a point value on that. I know what it will take to start my business, all of the different things. And And the person who was talking about the popcorn shop had the fantastic advantage of having a friend and actually being involved in the startup of a similar business. So she knows a lot more than, let's say, I would about starting up a popcorn shop. And that's fantastic. That's great. So what do I know what it takes to start the business. And here I'm comfortable selling my product or service. And I know what it takes to actually run the business. So not only how do I start the business, but how do I keep it going? How do I do new sales? How do I bring people in if it's like a retail, or how do I engage new customers? My business is a consulting business, so I have customers and they may engage my services and then they may not engage my services for 2 or 3 years. So I have to go out and sell to new customers all the time. Luckily, I can get references from previous customers. I can get them to recommend me. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that, but you've got to think about that. So understand what it's going to take to get funding, know how much revenue I need to make my business go. And, I've got a plan on how to do that. And then the personal readiness here. I'm ready to work hard, achieve my goals. And, I know what the challenges are and I've got a plan to tackle them. And with any plan, as Eisenhower said, the value is in the planning, not in the plan. So any plan is going to be disrupted as soon as it's implemented. So the more things you can take into account, the better off you are. But there will always be those things that you didn't necessarily take into account here. So, if you have some time, or if you've taken the assessment, or again, think about, what might keep you from starting your business. What are the things that might give you an advantage here? And how ready are you to start a business? So we'll also start taking some questions here. So next steps, homework, attend other SCORE webinars, set up a SCORE mentoring session to complete your assessment. So take your assessment to your SCORE mentor and say, these are the areas I'm really good at what my product is, but I'm not really good at sales. So how would I improve that? Think about building a business plan. Think about, there are templates that SCORE has, and your mentors can help you with those sorts of things. But those are some next steps. And here are some free resources. I'll leave this up while you're while I'm taking some questions here. But these are definitely some different places within the SCORE website that you can get really good information here. Let's see. Slushies, nachos, that goes along with the popcorn. And so, yeah, so the question is, would a sole proprietorship not need an LLC, just a DBA, doing business as? Yes, absolutely. That's what it is. Now, some people call themselves a sole proprietorship when they actually have an LLC. But an LLC is an officially structured business entity that is different than your personal entity. So if that makes any sense. So DBA means that all of your personal assets are fair game if someone wants to sue you, or you go bankrupt, or whatever. It's your assets, not the company's assets. Let's see. Like to apply for a small business loan? Well, those all come through bankers. So the Small Business Administration has advice and has information, and SCORE mentors have information about a small business loan. There is a process to go through. Again, a lot of the things that we were talking about here, if you go for a small business loan, let me go back. You're going to need to know all of these. You're going to have a business plan. You're going to need to understand the finances behind your business. How much is it going to cost to run it? How much is it going to cost to buy it? So all the questions that we've had here are questions that you need to answer before you go in for a small business loan, because if they say, well, how much does it cost to buy popcorn in bulk? Do you want to buy it popcorn from this particular part of the country or part of the world, or do you want to buy popcorn from that? How are you going to store it? If they have questions like that, and you're going to have some answers for that. Let's see, working on the business plan. Is that what you were saying, Bernina? That you're working on your business plan? Good, fantastic. And just for that, there's kind of a new thing. So a business plan can be daunting. There's a lot of different things. And as you see, executive summary, what's the business? What's the financial forecast? Supporting data. It could be 40 pages. There's also a thing called a business model canvas that is featured in one of the books that I have here called The Lean Startup. So the business model canvas breaks your business environment up into 9 sections where you look at who are my customers, who are my suppliers, who are my partners, who are my competition, what are some core items that can give you a good insight into your business. Let's see. Distribute the PowerPoint. That's a good thing. So if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, send me an email, john.fisher@scorevolunteer.org. And that will, you probably got an email from me when you registered for this, but that's my email, and I can see if I can put the links into the chat here. Yeah. Well, here's. Now it looks like I'm not able to do that here. Here's the business model canvas that we had talked about. So this is the idea of a business model canvas. And 4 Steps to the Epiphany is a very good book about how you get to a successful company, how that starts out, and how you get there. So that's some of those. So here's my email, john.fisher@scorevolunteer.org. And if you want a copy of the presentation, please send that. We will also have this presentation available in a few days or maybe a week on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search for SCORE Mentors North Chicago, you should come to our YouTube channel. The other way to do that is to go to our website, northchicago.score.org, and you'll see our social media icons in there in the website, and that'll take you to YouTube, and it'll take you to the Facebook and the various other places here. Thank you, Angela. There you go, northchicago.score.org. So any other questions? It's been good for me to share some information and some knowledge here. I always get a good sense of accomplishment after these, because I hopefully have answered some questions for you. And you have given me some questions or some things to think about that I didn't necessarily know about. And so to me, it's always a good exchange. So if I can share some knowledge and I can get some good responses here, I think it's a good evening. And thanks again for being with us this evening. Thanks again for sharing your time. And take a look at northchicago.score.org. It's a wonderful website. It has more resources than you can ever imagine on there. Lots of templates, lots of on-demand webinars about all these things. And as we say, also go to your local libraries, local chambers, and they have really good information about this in stuff as well. So take advantage of all the resources that you have. And I will bid everyone good night. And I think you can take a copy of the chat. I believe you're allowed to do that so that you get the email and the website here. So thanks a lot. And I will see you in another SCORE presentation.